From WAMU 88.5 at American University in Washington, welcome to the Kojo Namdi Show. Later in the broadcast, new rules for parking pop-ups and mom-and-pop stores in the nation's capital. But first, the last time we talked with former D.C. Mayor Vincent Gray on this show was a little more than a month ago. The United States Attorney for the District of Columbia had just said he would not be filing charges against Gray in a long-running investigation into whether the race that put him into office in 2010 was corrupted by an illegal shadow campaign. But that interview also ended with open questions about the future of the city and about Mayor Gray himself. So we invited him back today. Vincent Gray is not only former mayor of the District of Columbia, he's also a former chair of the D.C. Council and a former council member who represented Ward 7. He is a Democrat. Vincent Gray joins us in studio. Welcome.
Thank you, Kojo. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. When we last chatted, we spent a lot of time looking backward on your 4 years as mayor and how they were shaped by the investigation into your 2010 campaign. We did not spend as much time looking forward. Since then, you've been considering putting yourself back out as a candidate, this time for the D.C. Council. Where are you at this point in that process?
Well, I've made a decision. Lots of people have been urging me to do one or another thing, and I've said a lot of times that I was seriously thinking about running at large for the council or running for the Ward 7 seat. So, Kojo, I've made a decision that I'm going to run for the Ward 7 seat in the District of Columbia Council.
Well, you can start calling right now, 800-433-8850. What do you make of the idea of Vincent Gray serving on the D.C. Council? Do you think his presence on the council would be good or bad for the city? 800-433-8850. You can send email to kojo@wamu.org or shoot us a tweet at Kojo Show. You just heard Mayor Gray announce that he will be running for the Ward 7 seat on the D.C. Council. You spent 8 years representing the entire city, 4 as council chairman, 4 as mayor. Why go for the Ward 7 seat instead of the citywide at-large seat?
Well, Ward 7 is home. I've lived in Ward 7 for a very long time, and as you indicated earlier, Kojo, I represented Ward 7 for 2 years before I ran for the council chair seat. I've had lots of people. I've done some speaking at various civic associations in various areas of Ward 7, and there are just any number of people who have come to me and asked me if I would consider running for the seat in Ward 7. There is, sadly, there's wide dissatisfaction at this stage with the representation. I was at the Penn Branch Civic Association just a few weeks ago, and they really have a vibrant and dynamic group there, but they're looking for leadership that's going to work on what really are the key problems in Ward 7, like economic development.
Before we get specific to Ward 7, a poll conducted by a PAC formed by your former campaign manager, Chuck Thies, indicated that, according to that poll, you had a good chance of winning either the at-large seat or the Ward 7 seat, but that the Ward 7 seat would probably be less difficult or easier for you to win. Did that factor in your decision?
No, none of these, races are easy by any stretch of the imagination. It really came down to where I thought I could do the most good, and that was as the council member in Ward 7, especially given the opportunity that I think we have, Kojo, which I want to do, and that is to really build a cadre of young, professional leaders who are interested in doing one or another thing on behalf of the ward. So this will be an opportunity to do that during a campaign, and hopefully if we're successful, we'll be able to do that afterwards as well.
The current council member for Ward 7, Yvette Alexander, was once a protege of yours, but you've said recently, and you just said here again, that when it comes to Ward 7, people are dissatisfied. What do you feel are the roots of that dissatisfaction?
Well, I was at an ANC meeting a couple of weeks ago, and Councilmember Alexander got up to speak, and the first thing that happened was there was a person that jumped right on her, as soon as she finished her comments, indicating that her office hadn't been responsive. And I've heard that a lot. I had a person this morning because there's been a lot of promoing of this possible announcement today, I had a person to call and left me a message at my home this morning about constituent services, wanted me to do something at this stage on behalf of them with respect to constituent services. And of course, that's not something I can readily do because I'm not in office at this point. But I think it bespeaks the challenges that exist. I think it bespeaks the dissatisfaction that exists at this stage. And that's a bit sad for me.
In case you're just joining us, our guest is Vincent Gray, former mayor of the District of Columbia. He's just announced that he will be running for the Ward 7 council seat. What happened between you and Yvette Alexander? She endorsed you within hours of your 2014 run for office. What happened between then and now that caused you to not to be political friends anymore?
Well, I think first of all, you have to look at Kojo, the fact that I think something would have happened no matter what. When you look at the people who were jumping into the race, the dissatisfaction at this stage. So I think whether I got into the race or not, there were people who were ready to try to make a change. You hear it all across the ward. I hear it a lot at this stage. So I think first and foremost, it's a question of looking at the fact that people want change. We've got, council members who've been on there for a year or 2 years or whatever, who, really are high profile in whatever they're working on at this stage. And unfortunately, and people talk about it all the time, you don't hear that kind of profile for the council member.
Have you had any conversations with her leading up to this decision?
No, I've been in a number of places with her. She knows that this was something that I was considering doing. She was actually at a presentation I made at Penn Branch. She's been at a number of other meetings that I've been in. So, we do talk, but we haven't talked about this.
The 2010 investigation isn't completely in your rearview mirror. Just this week, an audit released found that in your 2010 campaign, incomplete records were kept for hundreds of thousands of dollars in contributions. You've said that what they found is unacceptable. You know this is going to come up during this campaign. How do you plan to account for it as the person whose name was at the top of the ticket?
Well, I think the first and foremost thing to point out, Kojo, and that is there was no malfeasance that was involved. And what they basically said in the audit was that there were bookkeeping inadequacies, there were bookkeeping errors that were made. I've run 4 campaigns, 2004, 2006, and then 2014, which was the election campaign. And we've never had a problem with any of the, of those campaigns. Obviously, you go back and look first at the person who was the campaign manager for 2010, because that's that person's responsibility to oversee the bookkeeping, if you will. But it's not as if there's money missing or anyone took any money or anything like that. It's just a matter of now being able to account for all the money that was spent. And I think if you go back and read the audit, we're talking about, in one case, $12,000, another case, relative to the amount of money that was raised, it was minimal. On the other hand, you want it to be perfect, especially with something like that. I want it to be perfect.
Well, they talked about $141,000 in unreported receipts. Is that something that you have to reconcile yourself?
Well, I think there's been reconciled. If you go back and look, we were given an opportunity. The people who were involved in that, it wasn't me because I had nothing to do with the management of the finances. But if you go back and look, there was a report that was given a month or 60 days after the initial one that I think resolved those issues, Kojo. So there isn't a lot outstanding from that at this stage. But as I said before, I would want it to be as perfect as we possibly could make it. And we've got, an attorney who's experienced with campaign finance, who's working on this on our behalf, and it will continue until it's resolved.
To what degree are you concerned that what happened in that 2010 campaign and the scandal that followed it defined your time as mayor and may continue to define you in the eyes of voters?
Well, you're always concerned about issues like that. But one of the things that I'm proud of is what we were able to get accomplished on behalf of the people of the District of Columbia. We put together a report, a 70-page report, and we've disseminated it, widely to talk about the things that we accomplished. I mean, just look at the development that's taking place in the city. There's more that needs to be done, obviously, on the east end of the city. The jobless rate, the unemployment rate was brought down tremendously during our time. Look at the finances of the city. When I came into office, we had no discretionary dollars left. There was money in the bank, but it was all committed either to a congressionally required reserve fund or to a bond escrow fund. We went from having between $600 and $700 million in the bank with no discretionary dollars to, when we left, $1.87 billion in the bank. That really has provided a great cushion for the people of the District of Columbia to be able to move forward. So I'm very proud of what we were able to accomplish during that time, and want to bring that same kind of commitment back to the council.
Put on your headphones. I want to go to the telephones. We will start with Leroy in Washington. Leroy, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Kojo. Good afternoon, Mr. I was trying to say Mr. Mayor. I hope you'll be mayor one day again. But
well, you're always allowed to address officials by the highest title they have acquired.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, and Kojo. Let me just say, Vince, I'm glad you're back in politics. I think a lot of people you were definitely smeared by the Washington Post and the office of the Attorney General. What I miss about you is the constituent services part. I mean, your office was very accessible in getting things done, and I really miss that now, because I know everybody in your constituent services office when I needed something done, and God willing that you get back in, and we'll get to see you again in the mayor's office.
Well, thank you. And, you know, I'm a public servant at heart. You know, even before I got into politics, which was relatively, 10 years ago, I was in the nonprofit sector. I worked with people with disabilities. I worked with children who were homeless. And so this is an opportunity, frankly, to be able to continue to do things for people. And as you put it, constituent services is one of the most important things that you can do as a public official. People have lots of issues, and they turn to their elected officials to address those issues. So it's another opportunity to be able to help people get through those problems.
Leroy, thank you for your call. You can't talk politics in Washington without talking race. Was race at all a factor in your decision? It has been speculated that had you decided to run at large, there was more animosity against you among white voters than there is among black voters, and that if you had run at large, that could have been a factor in your candidacy. Is that something you considered at all?
No, my consideration was focused on where I could do the greatest good. And I felt based on, being, in Ward 7, where I've lived for many years, based on the sentiments that were expressed by people repeatedly in Ward 7 asking me to do this, that was my consideration. I mean, you look at, you brought up the poll earlier, and yes, the poll basically had me ahead in both the at-large race as well as the Ward 7 race. So I think we would be competitive in either one that we pursued.
Who is going to be the campaign manager in your Ward 7 race? Would it be the aforementioned Chuck Thies?
It will not. Chuck will be the treasurer of the campaign, and knowing Chuck, as diligent as he is, he will be right on top of every penny. We do have a campaign chair, Kerry Thornhill, who is a longtime friend, lived in Ward 7 many years even before I lived in Ward 7, and has graciously agreed, to chair the campaign. And we, in the coming days, we'll name a campaign chairman and do the other things that are necessary to make sure we have an excellent effort.
We're talking with former Mayor of the District of Columbia, Vincent Gray, about his decision to run for office for the Ward 7 seat on the D.C. Council. A few years ago, you reached a handshake deal with Walmart, where the company committed to build stores in D.C., but Walmart recently announced it was abandoning plans to build 2 stores on the east side of the city, including one at Skyland that was one of the main objectives of this entire deal. What would you say now to the person east of the river who felt Walmart was one of the promises made during your time as mayor, and that promise is now going undelivered?
Well, I look at Walmart as having reneged on a commitment that was made. I did a number of interviews associated with the reneging of Walmart on that deal. Not only was there a handshake, but there are also leases. They signed a lease to build in the Skyland Town Center. They signed a lease to build in Capitol Gateway, and they reneged. They've announced that they're closing 260 stores, and this is caught up in that. But it was a dastardly act to have done, really horrific to have done to the people of the District of Columbia on the east end of this city. And unfortunately, it once again leaves people with the feeling that folks on the east end got shafted. Um, I, you know, I honestly believe that Walmart should have gone forward with this, given the magnitude of that firm. When you look at the commitment that was being made there, I don't see how they save anything by not doing these two stores, especially if they're closing, I don't know, 260 stores worldwide. This was a commitment that was made, and this city stood up for them. We had a bill that was put before the council, that was passed by the council, the Large Retailer Accountability Act, which I vetoed because we wanted to be able to continue to create jobs for people in the District of Columbia. And those Walmart jobs are great starter jobs for lots of people. People can move up in that firm or move, elsewhere to other jobs in the city. And we worked hard to be able to make sure that we were going to pave the way for that store to be able to open.
There was an article that ran in the Post this week that said that before Walmart made the decision to pull out of Skyland, you were owning Skyland as a signature achievement from your time as mayor. One observer pointed out in the Post article that now that it's not moving forward, you're putting it on Mayor Muriel Bowser. What's your response to the person who feels you're trying to have it both ways? You feel apparently that the Bowser administration did not pay enough attention to this.
Well, I think as mayor, you've got to be on top of these things. It's exactly what I did during my time as mayor. You develop relationships with these developers. You develop relationships with these entities that are coming in. I was in the area yesterday of City Center and just walked around in City Center to see the stores that are there and how are they doing. I went in and talked to people in the stores just to get a sense of what's going on. So that's the job as mayor. It's a job I fulfilled, and it's a job that no matter who the mayor is, the mayor has to take responsibility for those things, Kojo.
When we're talking about the mayor, on what issues would you be most eager to provide an alternative to Mayor Bowser's agenda from your seat on the council? Right now, council members are pushing back hard on a crime plan that she has put forward. Where do you think the city should be going to reduce crime?
Well, first of all, I mean, we're gonna talk about crime during the campaign, but there are a number of other issues also. There's crime. One of the thoughts that I have is looking at whether we should should continue to increase the number of officers that we have in the city. Is there more that we should do for people who are returning citizens in the District of Columbia? One of the concepts that I pursued was actually having the Office of Returning Citizens in place to develop relationships with all the other entities across government, so that as returning citizens came back to the city or came for services, instead of trying to create a separate service system altogether, they would be able to be connected to the services that exist within the government. We've got work to do on Metro. Metro really has become a problem for people. There's the criminal activity, the violent criminal activity on Metro has increased over the last 12, 13 months. And we've got to be able to address that.
I want to talk about that for a second. Would you have supported the proposal that Councilmember Kenyon McDuffie offered to provide stipends to young people to stay out of trouble? I do not want to oversimplify that proposal, because when Councilmember McDuffie was last on this broadcast, he explained that this proposal had a lot to do with the number of young Black people, men in particular, who were incarcerated, that we have concerns about that. And he wanted to come up with a proposal that would not have incarceration as the first penalty for those people when they got into trouble. And one cannot help but observe that a lot of problems on Metro have been caused by young Black high school students.
I haven't fully read or evaluated that proposal, but I think anything that we can do to incentivize young people to stay out of trouble in the first place, Kojo, should be thoroughly evaluated and should be tried. So I want to look at it more. I appreciate the work that Councilmember McDuffie is doing as the chairman, of the committee that deals with criminal activity in the city. He's very thoughtful on the issues, and I know he's given a lot of thought to this, and I want to have the opportunity to be able to look more intensively at it.
Let's go to the phones. Here is Lane in Washington. Lane, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Thanks, Kojo. Hello, Mr. Mayor.
Lane, how are you?
Great. I know you've been a great champion of the LGBT community throughout your career, even before you ran for office. Yvette Alexander is the only remaining person on council that voted against marriage equality. Should you prevail, we will no longer have anyone on council who did not or does not support marriage equality. So just wondering if that had any factor in your decision.
It did not, but I think you're right. I've been a strong proponent of, issues affecting the LGBT community in the District of Columbia. I was the chair of the council when we passed the law to create marriage equality. And you certainly will remember that was a fiery time. Things have changed a lot in the years since, thankfully. But when we went through that, we were one of the first in the nation, not the first, but one of the first in the nation to step up and take that position. And I tried to get everybody on the council to vote for this. And there were a couple of members who did not vote for that. And Councilmember Alexander was one of those. I'm sure she had her reasons for it. But I really felt it was important to make that statement at that stage. And since we've adopted the law, the city has moved light years. I think we're now viewed as a place where people who are in the LGBT community who are part of it can feel comfortable living in the city.
And of course, now that you know that Mayor Gray has announced his intention to run for the Ward 7 seat, we are therefore obligated to invite Yvette Alexander on the broadcast at some point to respond to some of the comments made here. So we are extending that invitation. Let's go next to Maceo. Maceo, you are on the air. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Kojo. Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Maceo, it's afternoon.
Afternoon, sorry. Great. I'm calling. I've been a Ward 7 resident since 2004. The first election there was when Vincent Gray was running for Ward 7 chairman, and then council member. And then when he moved up to chair, and then we had him as mayor in 3 different positions. I heard you just talk about City Center. I heard you talk about how Walmart shafted us in Ward 7, kind of double shaft, and that as the mayor, you're responsible for relationships with a lot of these developers. How do you expect us to see Ward 7 be better represented after having you represent us since 2004 when, Ward 7 really kind of looks pretty similar except for maybe Park 7, and now we have that big hole in Hillcrest. So that's one of my big concerns.
Do you want to know how he will fill those holes? You want to know what development he will bring to Ward 7, or you're suggesting that he cannot?
I'm wondering how it would be any different since 2004 when it really looks very similar. And he's held offices.
Allow me to have Vincent Gray respond.
Well, I think there clearly are major pockets in Ward 7 that continue to need attention. Minnesota Avenue, we've got development going on there. Just look at the residential building that was built during my time as mayor at the intersection of Minnesota and Benning Road. And now the retail is starting to fill in there along the first floor of that development. You're getting more and more retail. I was over at Friendship Collegiate yesterday and noticed that there's a cafe that is open right there along that strip. We've got work to do with Penn Branch. Penn Branch is a very challenging shopping center, to say the least. The topography is very difficult to work with. And instead of just focusing now on trying to get a few more tenants to fill in there, I'd really like to work towards trying to figure out how we raise and redesign what Penn Branch would be. Clearly, a lot of work has been done with the Skyland Town Center. More work than ever had been done in the past, and people have been waiting for this for, 20 or 25 years. If you go past the Skyland Town Center at this stage, you will see that all the buildings have been completely raised. The CVS was being relocated to another site because it had made the decision that it wanted to stay there. and there was a temporary building that was built in order to accommodate CVS. So the goal will be, and it's not going to be easy. The goal will be to try to get a another anchor tenant to commit to Walmart, to where Walmart would be.
Thank you very much for your call, Monsieur. There's a movement afoot to put a hike in the minimum wage up for referendum on the ballot, but a judge last week said that the Board of Elections was not in a position to approve the language of the measure last year because the terms of some of the members serving on it had expired. To what degree are you accountable here? There seems to be some confusion about whether board members can serve indefinitely.
I'm not sure the judge is right on this one. I've talked to some people about this, and historically, people have been able to hold over in those positions until their successors were appointed. So I think this case is going to be appealed. It may be appealed already.
Yep.
And if it does, we'll see what the outcome is. But I think there are a lot of people who believe that in this instance, the judge may have erred.
Our Marston Ostermule reported that attorneys have asked the judge to amend or alter his ruling, citing a 1998 D.C. law that they say allows board members to continue serving beyond their terms.
Yeah.
As such, they say the board's approval of the language was appropriate. Was that your understanding as mayors, that board members could serve indefinitely?
Yeah, in certain instances. There are certain boards where it's pretty clear that you can serve up to 180 days after your time has expired. But this was not one that fell into that category, in my opinion, and my understanding of the law as it's written.
Here is Will in Northwest Washington, D.C. Will, you are on the air. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, Kojo. Good evening, Mayor, Chairman Gray.
Good afternoon.
Chairman Gray, when you were chairman, you held a oversight hearing of the 2009 reduction in force of D.C. public schools. You heard from the then chancellor and CFO. They stated to you that they did not want to follow the council rules because the council directed the city council, they directed the school system.
We don't have a great deal of time left, Will. Where are you going with this?
The chairman never took action on what he found from that oversight hearing.
Well,
why?
I'm not exactly sure what it is that I didn't take action on that I should have taken action on. As the chairman, of course, you are in a different position than as mayor. But first of all, I supported education reform that was proposed by then Mayor Fenty. We turned the governance responsibility over to the mayor. The Board of Education, as it was constituted then, was eliminated. And I think we've made progress. We continue to see increases in the performance of our students. We've got a long ways to go. They changed the testing this year to the PARC and don't use the CAS anymore. But I think in the last analysis, the question is whether we have put in place the mechanisms that will allow our students to continue to progress. I've been working on a fellowship this year with Howard University. And we are on the 11th. We're going to have a focus on education reform that will look at the District of Columbia in terms of what we've been able to accomplish here with charters and with the changes we've made in our traditional public schools.
Thank you very much for your call. Vincent Gray is known as a former mayor of the District of Columbia, a former chair of the D.C. Council, and a former council member who represented Ward 7. Now he is known as a candidate for the Ward 7 seat on the council. Thank you so much for joining us. Good luck to you.
Thank you, Kojo.
We're going to take a short break. When we come back, new rules for parking, pop-ups, and mom-and-pop stores in the nation's capital. I'm Kojo Nandi.